Hey greatness, it's me, Sister Medina, and can I be honest? This conversation took a minute for me to be able to say. I honestly think if I tried to have this conversation um, at any point before right now, I wouldn't have been able to do it because this conversation is about the hurt that can happen in sisterhood. It's a conversation that we have to be open to and intentional about. And so let me just start by saying, come on into the room, sis. Come on into the room. This is for my sisters who you've been doing this work for a while and you have experienced sister hurt. You may have caused sister hurt. And the responsibility that is incumbent upon us. Now, I'm not trying to resolve conflicts or anything like that. I want to name. And if you, at the end of this conversation, want to have a space where we can have this conversation more boldly, then let me know. Okay, drop it in the comments, send me a DM, let me know. And it's because not only have I also dealt with this, I remember having a conversation. A sister friend of mine called me and she said, Mathina, where is the space for those of us who have been wounded by those we serve? Where do we have a space to have this conversation? And so this is an introduction to the reality that in leadership in particular, but certainly in sisterhood as a body, there's a conversation that's needed for those of us who believe deeply, unapologetically in sisterhood, and we've also been hurt inside of it. It is to name that we as women, and the majority of the people I serve, the majority of the clients and the women in my community are Black women, but I have women from a variety of backgrounds. Yet I know that who is often called to me are women who look like me. And we're often called to serve each other. And so as a Black woman, I've been hurt by Black women. And I'm sure that's happened to you if that is a significant portion of your community. Just like Latinas have been hurt by Latinas. White women have been hurt by white women. You get the point, right? Proximity not only breeds power, it also positions us to be hurt by the very people we are around. Okay? Let's just be clean and into it. So I want to name at the beginning of this conversation that I come from an ethos, from a reality, from a belief system that sisterhood is sacred. And when it breaks, for those of us who are in leadership, it changes us as a leader. Because when sisterhood and there's harm that comes out of the community of sisterhood, it isn't just a shift in experience. It's a shift. It can be a shift in identity, in belonging. For many of us, sisterhood is survival. And when I want us to enter into this conversation, as I'm talking to you, if you're like, I'm gonna need a minute, hit pause, okay? Then come on back later. Because I do believe it's critical for many of us to have the conversation in the sisterhood spaces we're in, and deeply so if we're leaders. So I wanted to, as I sat with it, I wanted to come up with and share 3 truths where we have to be willing to normalize the tension that can show up in sisterhood, because often we want to idealize the best parts of it. And baby, let me tell you, I will never eliminate sisterhood from my life. Sisterhood has saved me way more than it's broken me. So if we experience harm inside of it, yes, it hits our identity, not just our feelings. And those of us who are leaders, one of the main truths that we have to acknowledge and step into is if we're carrying around unspoken sister hurt while still striving to serve others, it is detrimental to your gift and your calling. Silence around this creates isolation. Silence around the fact that sisterhood can harm creates burnout. And I don't want us avoiding this conversation because it doesn't protect sisterhood. Avoiding this conversation does not protect sisterhood. It weakens it. It weakens it. So in order to strengthen our communities, I feel like these three core truths about sisterhood harm in particular and what happens after that harm is absolutely critical to seeing more safe, successful sisterhood. So one of the first truths, aside from the fact that you got to deal with the fact that it has happened, is to say it this way. Sisterhood can be both the wound and the way. I know a little bit of alliteration. Okay, it helps with my memory. It can be both the wound and the way, because from the wound can come wisdom. So harm it doesn't cancel out the fact that harm can happen in sisterhood, and harm doesn't cancel the value in sisterhood, because I don't know of anyone who does sisterhood, right, that can say harm outweighs the safety of healthy sisterhood. I'm so deeply, I want to hold your hand when I say this. Come on, give me a hand. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. I want to hold your hand when I say this. Even in my own reflection, many of the wounds that we experience in sisterhood don't come from sisterhood. It comes from misalignment. It comes from silence. It comes from misused power. It comes from misplaced rage. It comes from trauma that's now being transferred rather than transformed. That has been my experience of 20 plus years of being in sisterhood spaces where I'm in leadership, and a lifetime of being in sisterhood spaces that nourish me, that challenge me, and seeing it reflected in many ways. And it happens in so many spaces. In your faith-based community, it happens at work, it happens in the third space, that place where you go if you're in a sorority, if you've built communion and sisterhood amongst other women, and you just got your group. We've seen it. There was a viral video not too long ago where some women were talking about going out and they were probably really young. From what I saw, they looked young. Okay, and by young, I'm talking about y'all was probably in y'all 20s. I mean, I'm young too, but I'm in my 40s. Okay, so the video, though, the girls were talking about how they were going out for New Year's Eve, and then one of their friends, the venue, said, oh no, this person is going to be extra for them because the venue considered that person plus size. And all in all, where it boiled down to, I don't care how many hours later, was that the friend wanted to put their sister friend in a Uber to go home so that they can go in the club that was refusing them their friend entry for money because of how she looked. And the friend said, if I'll get in the Uber and go, but after that, we're no longer friends. And then the video showed the girls in the club living it up. Here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to say about the friend who got in the Uber. Sis, that betrayal doesn't mean you were foolish. It means you trusted, and you trusted someone that taught you a painful lesson on discernment. And discernment, not abandonment, is the work, especially for those of us who are leaders. And I pray that you have removed, I'm talking to the sister, and for any of us who've experienced this, that now seeing who people are and have shown themselves to be, when we got to the red, we say flags, but the red, instead of catching it at the yellow and the orange and whatever other color you want to put before you get to that glaring red sign. Now we've moved them out of the way. We can make room for safe and healthy sisterhood where belonging is the birthright, right? And doesn't get dismissed because it inconveniences someone who's supposed to be standing in safety and security with you. What hurt you doesn't get to define what you believe forever. Instead, while we know that sisterhood can have wounding, I'm also here to lift up the conversation that sisterhood also has wisdom. And it is often the way to the most authentic version of ourselves. Number two, pulling away after sisterhood is often a necessary layer, but it is not the destination. Baby, let me tell you something. I pulled away. I pulled away. I was ghost, okay? I was living my best life, still experiencing sisterhood, of course, being healed by sisterhood. Because the thing that harmed me also healed me. It's a medicine, like, look it up. We'll talk about it in a second. But it's the medicine that healed me, yes. But when it talks about being in leadership, when it came to my divine assignment in the world of curating space, I was in withdrawal. I was like, I'm good. I'm going to be over here. I'm going to teach this thing and I'm going to do it so well. And I did it well. Still can do it well. It was a zone of excellence for me. It wasn't my zone of God work. Zone of genius is another way of saying it, if you've ever read that book. That withdrawal was protective. It was wise. I'm not saying I wasn't supposed to. I'm not saying that you aren't supposed to. It becomes a problem when it turns into permanent hiding. And in permanent hiding, you can't heal. In permanent hiding, you can't create an opportunity to position yourself in the most profound way for the next calling on your life and how you do it. That pausing is not quitting, but quitting becomes the state that you sit in when you hide. You can rest. You can retreat. It's actually part of leadership formation to do so. Yet that pause is supposed to be exactly that. It's a pause. Then there's supposed to be a continuation. The other piece that it pulls from me in that pause, what I began doing was questioning my obedience. And so I questioned then my way of showing up to do this work, because after that, I was like, I don't need to, I did almost 20 years of that. I was good. Like, I did the work. And somebody actually just said this to me last week. I had a client say, Mathina, isn't discipline and obedience tomato? What came up in my being was, no, it's not. And that conversation came back to me as I was preparing for this share, because what it shows up for me as is when I was in a space of questioning what I know is my divine assignment and whether I had done it. I mean, I was young, but I've been doing this since I was 21. And so almost 20 years later, I'm good, right? I did it, right, Lord? Have you ever been that way? Drop it in the comments. Let me know that this is an alignment, okay? Meaning you begin questioning. I was obedient. I did the work. I'm done, right? But you feel that tug. I'm not about to cry. You feel that tug. You feel that calling. You feel that tap. And you see those that you are assigned to in the world struggling with what you know you can actually help them with. Yet the pain is so loud. It's so loud that you sit in hiding. Or, and this I believe is even worse, you think you call yourself doing just enough. I'm gonna do this one little thing here where it's safe, but it's not safe. It's a cover. And I saw myself saying, especially since when I turned 40, I was like, this is my decade of discipline. And this is how I know there's a difference between obedience and discipline, because I started looking at how I was being disciplined with my health and nutrition and my diet, with the work that I'm doing in the world, with how I was running my business. And it was Hear me, it was doing well. Like business doing well. Getting myself together health-wise, doing well. Here's the thing, sis. Lord, help me say this. Obedience is receiving the assignment and saying yes. Discipline is how you structure the pattern of your life to do the assignment at the highest level. Discipline is the cadence and the frequency and the way by which you do the work consistently that allows you to realize the assignment that you're being obedient to. That is the difference between discipline and obedience. And so when we have experienced hurt and harm in the work of our calling, that pause can be faithful and not fearful, as long as you begin to curate spending your faith in the practice of your assignment and healing yourself through the journey, through the tools that you use for that healing to occur. Tools like sisterhood, tools like facing the harm that was caused, tools like fortifying your faith muscle to see, understand, discern what you experience, and decide to return to the calling. For me, for those of us who build sisterhood spaces and we've been hurt by sisterhood, when we return, it isn't to be like, yeah, I'm back and I'm about to. Instead, it's returning with more wisdom. It's returning with clarification. It's returning to sisterhood spaces without self-abandonment. And that leads us to the third truth, and that is leading sisterhood after harm requires stewardship, not just sacrifice. You aren't supposed to just show up with unprocessed pain leaking into your leadership. That starts showing up as you creating silence when there should be sound. It starts showing up as over control. It starts showing up as people pleasing, right? Looking, instead of seeing those warning signs, you become the warning sign. Instead, what we really need, and I'm not saying you have to be fully healed. I don't necessarily subscribe to that adage. Oh, you need to be fully healed before you step. No, it does mean that you're not leading from your trauma. It means that you are a leader. You have to be to the point where you're the leader who understands with honesty that what they're carrying is an opportunity for someone else to also move through something that may have harmed them, or bring their joy and it not be sacrificed to your pain. I know we talk a lot about healing, but this is also about joy. It's also about celebration. It's also about seeing the community that you're meant to lead, to curate, to support, to steward well into moments of joy and celebration as much as you deal with harm and healing. You can't steward a community well if you abandon yourself. We're not called for that. This is not martyrdom. Instead, what we're looking at is a level of responsibility for our obedience to respond to the authority of our assignment with the discipline that you're ordering your life, your cadence, your self-regulation in submission to that authority, so that your obedience is a yes, your discipline is how you live that yes with integrity. And so you are able to steward it in your leadership in any space you're in, but certainly in sisterhood. Staying through harm is not always obedience. Leaving without discernment is not always wisdom. I want you to look at this work as not necessarily to push through without pause, right? Pushing through without pause may not be discipline. It may be avoidance. Because discipline does include rest, retreat, and recalibration so that you can steward well. Hear me when I say that. That leading after this harm, while it requires stewardship, it isn't about you sacrificing yourself at the altar of sisterhood. That is not what this is. That is not what the assignment is. That's my truth. It's a truth I share, and it's a truth I experience and I see reflected in communion and sisterhood. All right, we're getting down to the point where I want to wrap this up. And I want to offer you some reflection questions. So take a breath, release, shake it out. Okay. Here's your question. Am I reacting to the wound or responding to the call? Is my discipline forming me or deforming me? Am I hiding from sisterhood or tending myself so I can return clean, calm, ready, not transferring pain? Okay. So I want to close this conversation by leaning in to what I believe to be true. Sisterhood doesn't heal through obedience alone. It heals through disciplined, values-led leadership. Mature sisterhood requires boundaries, truth, and care. You can be successfully surrounded. Shout out to my sisters. Leadership after harm is about returning without resentment, and returning from a place where you understand who you be now, not in spite of, but reformed the pain to not just purpose, but better positioning so that that wound then becomes the wisdom. Okay. I believe that faithfulness to your calling, to your assignment, is not self-erasure, but rather it's an opportunity to say, how do I serve now? Okay. All right. We're done. We're done. I told y'all this one was a little tender. It's to the heart. I do want to say this. I'm willing, and let me know, drop it in the comments, let me know if this is a conversation that stirs something for you. And we get to have we can have a conversation and we get to decide how we work through the layers that we experience in sisterhood as leaders. And so I want to offer an opportunity, if you want a conversation where we have the opportunity to look at those layers, to call out what it looks like to heal, and to name what it can look like to just be in a safe space where you can name what you've experienced and you don't have to protect or defend how you feel just because you're a leader, then let me know. Let me know, okay? So I would love to have that conversation. And I'm not trying to do a whole, but like, this is not a, let's expose. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to talk to those of us who are leaders, and we want to hold an intentional container for our ability to be open and to have that conversation. So let me close on this. Steward your assignment without abandoning yourself. That is what I believe is needed in sisterhood today. You're allowed to lead with your wisdom and recognize if a wound is leading rather than your wisdom. Sisterhood is the opportunity to return. We can name that we've been harmed by sisterhood and still see that it is worthy work to return to it at a more authentic version of ourselves and whole. All right. I love y'all. The pieces in the back hole again. I pray that this conversation was something that was of value to you. Let me know that it was. I look forward to it. I love y'all. The pieces in back hole again. We'll talk soon.